Hey everyone, I'm Mono Scaling. I'm here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now get comfortable and relax. My name is Olivia Price. This happened in September of 2023 at an RV site in Fish Lake National Forest, Utah. I should have said no when Marcus suggested the trip, but I didn't, and now I have to live with what we found. There were 5 of us from the office. Marcus organized it as a team-building thing after our company restructured and merged 3 departments. We barely knew each other. Marcus handled client relations. I worked in data analysis. Jen did HR, Derek was in marketing, and Paul managed IT infrastructure. We'd been thrown together into a new team without really choosing to work with each other, and Marcus thought a long weekend camping would help us bond. I didn't want to go. I'd bought the RV 2 years earlier thinking I'd use it to get away on weekends, but after my divorce I'd only taken it out twice. Both times I'd driven somewhere, parked, and spent the entire time sitting inside checking my phone. The idea of being stuck with 4 co-workers for 3 days made me anxious, but I agreed anyway. Sometimes it's easier to say yes. We met at the office parking lot Friday afternoon. Marcus drove his wife's SUV and Jen rode with him. Derek and Paul followed in Derek's truck. I brought up the rear in the RV. The drive took about 4 hours. Marcus had picked the site because it was remote and cheap. He'd rented 2 spots next to each other. The campground was older, the kind with concrete pads and hookup posts that looked like they hadn't been updated since the 70s. Only 3 other RVs were there when we arrived, all clustered near the entrance. Our sites were at the far end, closest to the tree line. The ranger station at the entrance was closed, with a note taped to the door saying to pay in the morning. We set up camp while it was still light. Marcus and Jen pitched a tent on one pad. Derek and Paul shared another tent on the second pad. I parked the RV between them. The routine of setting up helped. I focused on leveling the RV and running the hookups. It gave me something to do while the others talked about work. That first night was fine. We made hot dogs and sat around Marcus's propane fire pit because actual fires weren't allowed due to drought conditions. The conversation was what you'd expect. People complained about the merger, speculated about who might get laid off in the next round of cuts, made jokes about the new VP nobody liked. I didn't contribute much. I was there, but I wasn't really there. Around 10, Derek mentioned he'd seen a trail earlier when he walked down to the bathrooms. He wanted to check it out in the morning. Marcus said we should all go, make it a group hike. Everyone agreed. I said I'd think about it. I went to bed around 11. The RV felt too big with just me in it. I lay in the dark listening to the others talking outside, their voices getting quieter as they moved to their tents. Eventually it was silent, except for wind in the trees. I didn't sleep well. I never do in new places. Around 3 in the morning I got up to use the bathroom. When I looked out the window above the sink, I saw someone standing near the tree line, just standing there facing our camp. I couldn't make out any features, just a shape darker than the darkness around it. I watched for maybe 30 seconds, and it didn't move. Then I blinked and it was gone. I told myself it was my imagination, or another camper from one of the RVs near the entrance, but those were a quarter mile away and it was 3 in the morning. I went back to bed and eventually dozed off. In the morning, Marcus knocked on my door at 7:30. He had coffee in a thermos and paper cups. We sat at the RV's fold-out table, and he asked if I was doing okay. I said I was fine. He said I'd been quiet last night. I told him I was just tired. The others woke up around 8. We had breakfast, and then Derek reminded everyone about the hike. The trail he'd seen was unmarked, just a worn path leading into the forest from behind the bathrooms. Marcus said we should at least check it out. I didn't mention the figure I'd seen. It seemed stupid in daylight. We started hiking around 9:30. The trail was narrow but clear, winding uphill through aspen and pine. Derek led. He had one of those expensive GPS watches and kept checking it. After about 40 minutes, he stopped and said something was wrong with the signal. The watch kept losing and reacquiring satellites. Marcus looked at his phone and said he had no service either. Paul said that was normal this far out. The trail opened into a clearing after another 20 minutes. There was an old fire ring in the center, the kind people make with rocks. Some of the rocks had been there long enough that grass grew around their bases. Derek walked the perimeter of the clearing and found where the trail continued on the other side. That's when Jen spotted it. She'd wandered to the far edge of the clearing near a cluster of dead trees. She called out and waved us over. At first I thought she'd found an animal den or something, but when we got closer I saw what she was pointing at. The ground had a depression in it, roughly rectangular, about 4 feet by 6 feet. The dirt looked disturbed, newer than the surrounding soil. Jen had cleared away some pine needles and exposed a corner of something metal. Derek knelt down and brushed more dirt away. It was definitely metal, green-gray with rivets along the edge. He cleared more of it. A hatch or maybe a door, set into the ground at an angle. Paul said it was probably an old Forest Service cache. Marcus thought it might be a hunting blind or food storage. Derek kept digging around the edges. After a few minutes, he'd exposed most of the hatch. It was about 3 feet wide and 4 feet long, made of heavy steel. There was a handle on one side, the kind you'd twist to unlatch. Nobody said we should open it, but nobody suggested walking away either. Derek grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't budge. He braced his feet and pulled harder. Still nothing. Paul helped him. Together they managed to break whatever seal had formed. The hatch lifted with a grinding sound, and they pushed it all the way open. There was a hole underneath, not deep, maybe 6 feet. A ladder made of rebar was bolted to one side. At the bottom was another hatch, horizontal this time, set into concrete. Marcus shone his phone flashlight down. The bottom hatch had a wheel lock like something you'd see on a submarine. Derek said he was going down to look. Marcus said we should probably head back. Jen asked what we thought it was. Nobody had a good answer. Derek climbed down anyway. His voice echoed up from the hole. He said the wheel turned. He said it was opening. Then he said there was a room underneath. Marcus told him to come back up. Derek didn't respond. We waited. After maybe 2 minutes, Marcus called down again. Derek's voice came back, but it sounded distant, like he'd moved away from the ladder. He said we needed to see this. Paul went down next, then Marcus. Jen looked at me and shrugged. She descended the ladder. I stood at the edge of the hole and looked down. I could see their phone lights moving around below, but I couldn't hear what they were saying anymore. I should have walked back to camp right then. Instead, I climbed down. The bottom hatch opened into a concrete room about 12 feet square. The walls were bare except for some kind of black mold growing in the corners. The air smelled like dirt and rust. There was a metal table bolted to the floor in the center, some folding chairs, a filing cabinet against one wall. That was all. Derek was going through the filing cabinet. He said all the drawers were empty except one. That one had a folder with papers inside. He pulled them out and spread them on the table. They were handwritten logs, dates, times, observations. The handwriting was neat, almost mechanical. The entries went back to 1983 and continued until 1991. The observations were about weather, animal movements, and something called pressure readings. The numbers meant nothing to me. Marcus asked if anyone knew what this place was. Paul said it could be part of an old Cold War installation. Utah had a lot of those. Jen said it seemed small for that. Derek kept reading the logs. One entry from August 1991 caught my attention. It said, "Pressure reading 7, 2 at 0300. Sound event lasted 43 seconds. No visual. Recommend immediate cessation." That was the last entry. Derek said we should take the folder. Marcus said we should leave it. While they argued, I noticed something about the room I hadn't seen at first. The walls weren't exactly square. One corner was slightly wider than the others, and there was a seam in the floor almost invisible under the dirt running along one side. I pointed it out. Paul walked over and brushed the dirt away. The seam outlined another hatch smaller than the first. This one was set flush with the floor. There was no handle, just a small hole in the center, the kind you'd need a tool to open. Derek found a metal rod hanging on a hook behind the filing cabinet. He inserted it into the hole and turned. Something clicked. He pulled, and the hatch lifted. Stairs led down, concrete steps disappearing into darkness that our phone lights couldn't penetrate. I said I wasn't going down there. Marcus agreed. He said we'd seen enough. Derek said he just wanted to look. Paul said he'd go with him. They descended the stairs. Their lights faded. The rest of us waited in the upper room. Jen sat in one of the folding chairs. Marcus leaned against the wall. I stood by the ladder watching the open hatch in the floor. 5 minutes passed, maybe 10. Marcus called down. No response. He called again, louder. Still nothing. Then we heard footsteps coming back up. Derek's head appeared first. He climbed out, followed by Paul. Derek's face was blank. Paul was smiling, which seemed wrong somehow. The smile was too wide. Marcus asked what they'd found. Derek said it was just more rooms. Empty rooms. Nothing interesting. Paul nodded, still smiling. He said we should probably head back. The hike back took longer than the hike out. Derek kept checking his GPS watch. He said the reading didn't match where we'd come from. Marcus said we probably just took a slightly different route. But I noticed Derek checking over his shoulder every few minutes. Paul walked behind everyone else. Whenever I glanced back, he was looking at the trees instead of the trail. And he was still smiling. We got back to camp around 2 in the afternoon. I said I was tired and went to lie down in the RV. Through the window, I watched the others. They made sandwiches and ate without talking much. Derek kept looking at his watch. Paul sat in a camping chair facing the forest, not moving, just staring. I must have fallen asleep because when I woke up it was dusk. I went outside. Marcus was alone by the fire pit, drinking a beer. I asked where everyone else was. He said Derek had gone for a walk and Jen was in her tent reading. He didn't mention Paul. I asked where Paul was. Marcus looked confused for a second, then said he thought Paul was with Derek, but he didn't sound sure. We sat in silence for a while. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no insects, just wind. Derek came back as it got dark. He looked pale. Marcus asked if he was feeling okay. Derek said he'd gotten turned around on his walk. He'd ended up near the bathrooms and seen something weird. The trail we'd hiked that morning wasn't there anymore, just trees and undergrowth, no path at all. Marcus said he must have been looking in the wrong spot. Derek shook his head. He said he'd marked the trailhead on his GPS. The coordinates were right. The trail was gone. Nobody said anything. Then Jen came out of her tent and asked if anyone had seen Paul. We all said no. She said she'd seen him walk into the forest about an hour ago. He'd been heading toward the other RVs near the entrance. Marcus said we should find him. Derek said he'd stay at camp. His stomach hurt, he said. Marcus and I walked toward the entrance with flashlights. Jen said she'd check the bathrooms. The 3 RVs near the entrance were dark and quiet. No one answered when we knocked. The ranger station was still closed. Marcus tried Paul's cell phone. No service. We walked back. Jen was waiting by our camp. She hadn't found him either. Derek was sitting by the fire pit, not moving. His eyes were closed. Marcus said Paul had probably just gone to bed in his tent. We should all get some sleep and sort it out in the morning. Derek didn't respond. Jen said goodnight and went to her tent. Marcus did the same. I went into the RV and locked the door. I know that sounds paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I sat at the table and tried to read on my tablet, but I couldn't focus. Around midnight, I heard voices outside. Low, murmuring. I looked out the window but couldn't see anyone. The fire pit was empty. Marcus and Jen's tent was zipped shut. So was Derek and Paul's. The voices continued for maybe 10 minutes, then stopped. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window watching the camp until the sky started to lighten. When it was light enough to see clearly, I went outside. Derek's tent was open. He wasn't inside. Neither was Paul. Their sleeping bags were unzipped from the inside, spread flat. Derek's backpack was there, but Paul's was gone. Marcus came out of his tent rubbing his eyes. I told him Derek and Paul were gone. He looked confused. He said Paul had come back last night. He'd heard him talking to Derek around midnight. That must have been the voices I'd heard. But now they were both gone. Jen joined us. She suggested we drive to the ranger station and report them missing. Marcus said they'd probably just gone for an early hike, but his voice didn't sound convinced. We waited until 8. They didn't come back. We drove to the ranger station. It was still closed, but there was a different note on the door now. This one said the station was unstaffed due to budget cuts. For emergencies, call a phone number. Marcus tried the number. No service. We drove back to camp. We'd have to drive farther out to get a signal. But when we got back, Derek was there. He was sitting in a camping chair by the fire pit, facing away from us. He didn't turn around when we pulled up. Marcus got out and walked over to him. He asked where Derek had been. Derek didn't answer. Marcus walked around to face him. Then Marcus stepped back quickly. I got out of the RV. Jen stayed inside, watching through the windshield. I walked over to Marcus. He was staring at Derek. Derek was smiling. The same smile Paul had after coming up from the underground room. Too wide, stretching his face in a way that looked painful. His eyes were unfocused, staring at nothing. Marcus said Derek's name. Derek's head turned toward us, but his eyes didn't track right. They moved independently, like he was trying to look at two things at once. Then he spoke. His voice was flat, with no inflection. He said, "Paul is waiting." Marcus asked where Paul was. Derek said, "Below. He wants everyone to come down. He says there's something you need to see." I asked Derek if he was okay. His smile widened if that was possible. He said, "I'm better than okay. We're all going to be better, once you see." Jen got out of the RV. She walked up behind us and gasped. She saw Derek's face and grabbed my arm. She whispered that we needed to leave. Right now. Marcus said we couldn't leave without Paul. Derek stood up. He was taller than I remembered. Or maybe he was standing straighter. He said Paul was fine. He said we should follow him. He said he'd take us there. None of us moved. Derek's smile faded slightly. He said we didn't have a choice. The pressure was increasing. We needed to go below before the next sound event. He said it in that same flat voice, like he was reading from a script. Marcus said we were calling for help. Derek said there was no help. He said the phone wouldn't work anyway. He was right, we'd already tried. Then Derek turned and walked toward the tree line. Not toward the bathrooms where the trail had been. A different direction entirely. Marcus looked at Jen and me. He said we should pack up and leave. Get to somewhere with cell service and call the police. I agreed. But Jen was staring at where Derek had disappeared into the trees. She said, what if Paul was hurt? What if he needed help? We argued for a few minutes. Marcus said the police could search. Jen said Derek knew where Paul was. We should at least follow and see. I said following Derek was a bad idea. Jen said I wasn't being logical. In the end, Jen followed Derek into the trees. Marcus ran after her, yelling for her to stop. I stood alone in the camp. I should have driven away. I should have left them all and gotten help. But I didn't. I followed them into the forest. I found them about 100 yards in. Derek was standing with his back to us, looking down at the ground. Jen and Marcus stood a few feet away. As I approached, I saw what Derek was looking at. The hatch. The same one we'd found yesterday. But it wasn't in the clearing. It was here, in the middle of dense forest, which made no sense. We'd hiked 40 minutes to find it before. Now it was practically in our camp. Marcus said this wasn't possible. Derek said the distance changed. He said pressure bends space. He said we needed to go down. Jen asked where Paul was. Derek pointed at the open hatch. He said Paul was waiting. He said Paul would explain everything. Marcus said we were leaving. He grabbed Jen's arm and turned to go. Derek grabbed Marcus. His grip must have been tight because Marcus gasped and tried to pull away. Derek held on. He said, "You need to see. It's important. Once you see, you'll understand." I stepped back. Derek's eyes locked onto mine. He said my name. Olivia. He said it slowly, drawing out the syllables. He said I was scared. He said fear was natural. He said it would pass once I saw. Then he let go of Marcus and walked to the hatch. He climbed down. Marcus was rubbing his arm. There were marks where Derek had grabbed him. Jen said we should call his name down the hatch, see if Paul was really there. Marcus said no. We were leaving now, but Jen walked to the hatch and called down. "Paul? Are you there?" A voice answered. It sounded like Paul. It said, "I'm here, come down, I need to show you something." Jen looked at us. Marcus said it wasn't Paul. I didn't know what to think. The voice sounded right, but something about the words was off. Too formal. Jen said she was going down just to check. Marcus said absolutely not. They argued. While they argued, I walked to the edge of the hatch and looked down. The concrete room at the bottom was dimly lit. I couldn't see the source of the light. Derek was standing at the base of the ladder. Next to him was someone who might have been Paul. Same height, same build. But I couldn't see his face clearly. The figure that might have been Paul looked up at me. His face was in shadow, but I saw teeth. White, perfectly straight. Smiling. He said, "Olivia, you should come down. There's something about you in the logs. Something important." I stepped back from the edge. Something about you in the logs. What did that mean? Jen pushed past me and started climbing down. Marcus tried to grab her, but she was already descending. He shouted her name. She didn't respond. Marcus looked at me. His face was pale. He said we had to get her back. I said I didn't think we could. We waited. Marcus kept calling down. No one answered. After maybe 5 minutes, Jen climbed back up. She was smiling. Marcus grabbed her shoulders and asked if she was okay. She nodded. Her smile didn't waver. She said Paul showed her the lower rooms. She said it was fascinating. She said we should all go down. Marcus backed away from her. He looked at me and said we were leaving right now. I agreed. We ran. Back toward camp, crashing through undergrowth. Behind us, I heard Jen calling our names. Her voice was cheerful, almost singing. She said we were overreacting. She said it was wonderful below. We'd love it. We reached camp. Marcus went straight to his SUV. He was fumbling with his keys when we heard footsteps. All three of them emerged from the trees. Derek, Paul, and Jen, walking in a line, all smiling. They didn't run. They walked calmly toward us. Marcus got his door open and yelled for me to get in the RV. I ran to the driver's door and climbed in. I started the engine. Marcus was already backing up his SUV. The three figures stopped at the edge of our camp. They stood side by side watching us, not moving, just watching. I put the RV in gear and followed Marcus. We drove toward the exit. The road curved through the forest for about a quarter mile before reaching the entrance. I kept checking my mirrors. No one was following. We passed the closed ranger station. The road continued another half-mile before joining the main highway. I could see Marcus's SUV ahead. We were going to make it. Then Marcus's brake lights flashed. He stopped. I stopped behind him. The road ahead was blocked, not by a gate or barrier, by trees, huge pines lying across the pavement. They hadn't been there when we drove in yesterday. Marcus got out of his SUV. I climbed out of the RV. We walked up to the fallen trees. They were too big to move. The trunks were at least 3 feet in diameter. Marcus said we'd have to backtrack and find another route. But there was only one road into the campground, and these trees blocked it completely. Marcus said maybe there was a service road, a back way out. I said I didn't think so, but we could look. We got back in our vehicles and turned around. As we drove back past the ranger station, I saw someone standing in the parking lot. I slowed down. It was Derek, just standing there, watching us pass, still smiling. We drove past our campsite. The road continued beyond it for another mile, then ended in a loop. No other exit. We'd have to go back. Marcus stopped at the turnaround. I pulled up next to him. He rolled down his window. He said we could try hiking out, follow the highway on foot. It was maybe 15 miles to the next town. I said okay. We'd have to pack light. Water, food, first aid. We went back to camp to gather supplies. The three of them were waiting. Derek, Paul, and Jen. They were sitting in camping chairs around the fire pit. Not talking, just sitting. Marcus stopped his SUV far enough away that they couldn't reach us quickly. I parked the RV next to him. We stayed in our vehicles, watching them. After a few minutes, Jen stood up. She walked toward us slowly. Marcus locked his doors. I did the same. Jen stopped a few feet from the RV. She called my name through the window. She said we were making this difficult. She said the pressure was building. We needed to go below before the sound event. I didn't answer. Jen tilted her head. Her smile faltered for a second, and I saw something underneath. Something scared. Then the smile came back, harder than before. She said, "It's not a request anymore." Derek and Paul stood up. They walked toward us, not rushing, casual, like they were coming to chat. But something about their movements was wrong. Too synchronized, like puppets on strings. Marcus started his engine. He backed up and swung around, heading for the exit again. I followed. In my mirror, I saw the three of them watch us go. They didn't try to follow. We reached the fallen trees. Marcus got out with a small emergency axe from his trunk. He said he'd try to cut through the smaller branches, maybe make a gap we could squeeze through. I helped him. We worked for maybe 20 minutes. The branches were thick and fresh. They didn't cut easily. We managed to clear a small opening, barely wide enough to crawl through. Marcus went first. He got stuck halfway, his jacket catching on broken branches. I helped push him through. He fell on the other side and stood up. He reached back through to help me. That's when I heard the sound. It came from everywhere and nowhere. A low vibration that I felt in my chest more than heard. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, building in intensity, then cut off abruptly. Marcus was staring back toward the campground. His face had gone white. He said we needed to move. Now. I squeezed through the gap. The branches tore at my jacket and scraped my arms. Marcus pulled me through. We started running down the highway. We ran for maybe half a mile before we had to stop. Both of us were gasping. I looked back. The forest behind us looked normal. Trees, sky, road. Nothing moving. Marcus said we should keep moving. We walked fast, not quite running. The highway was empty. No cars, no sign of anyone. After another mile, we came to a turnoff. A dirt road leading into the forest. There was a sign, but the letters were too faded to read. Marcus's phone beeped. He checked it. He had one bar of service. He tried calling 911. The call wouldn't connect. He tried texting. The message failed to send. We kept walking. The sun was getting low. We'd been walking for maybe 2 hours. The next town should have been close, but we hadn't seen any buildings or signs of civilization. Then we saw the RV, my RV, parked on the side of the road ahead of us. Impossible. We'd left it at the campground. But there it was. Marcus said we were going in circles. I said that didn't make sense. We'd been walking in a straight line. He said maybe the pressure Derek mentioned did something to space. Bent it. Made us loop back. I walked up to the RV. The door was locked. I still had my keys. I unlocked it and looked inside. Everything was where I'd left it. My tablet on the table. My jacket on the chair. But there was something new on the table. A folder. The same folder Derek had found in the underground room. The one with the handwritten logs. Marcus came up behind me. He saw the folder and said we should leave it. I opened it anyway. There were new entries, written in the same neat handwriting as the old ones. But these were dated today. Times and observations from this morning. 0630, group departs camp. 0947, discovery made. Hatch opened. 1134, first descent. 2 subjects. 1301, second descent. 1 subject. 1445, pressure reading 8. 4, sound event imminent. The entries continued. The last one was timed 5 minutes ago. 1712, 2 subjects fleeing. Recommend retrieval, pressure critical. Marcus grabbed the folder and threw it out of the RV. He said we needed to destroy it, burn it. I said that wouldn't change anything. He picked up the folder from the dirt and tore out the pages. He ripped them into pieces and scattered them. He said there, "It's done." I looked at the pieces of paper on the ground. The ink was already fading. The paper was turning brown at the edges, aging rapidly. Within seconds, the pieces crumbled into dust. Marcus stared at the dust. He said we were dreaming. This was a nightmare. We'd wake up in our tents and laugh about it. But we didn't wake up. I heard a vehicle approaching. We both turned. An SUV was coming down the highway from the direction we'd been walking. It was Marcus's SUV, empty, driving itself. It slowed and stopped next to us. The engine shut off. The doors unlocked with a click. Marcus walked up to it slowly. He opened the driver's door and looked inside. Everything was normal. His coffee cup in the holder. His sunglasses on the dash. He got in and checked the ignition. The keys were there. He said we should take both vehicles, drive out together, one of us in each. That way, if something happened, the other could keep going. I agreed. I got in the RV. Marcus got in his SUV. We started the engines and drove. We made it maybe 10 miles. The road was straight, the forest on both sides unchanging. Then I saw something ahead. The campground entrance. I stopped. Marcus stopped next to me. He got out and walked to my window. He said this wasn't possible. We'd been driving away from it. I said I knew. He said we should try again. Take a different road. I reminded him there were no other roads. He said then we'd drive off-road, through the forest. Something. We turned around and drove back the way we'd come. After about 5 miles, we came to a crossroads. I didn't remember passing a crossroads. Marcus stopped and looked at a map on his phone. He said the crossroads wasn't on the map. I said we should take it anyway. We turned right. The new road was narrower, more rutted. We drove for about 20 minutes. The road curved, and suddenly we were approaching the campground entrance again, from a different direction but definitely the same place. Marcus stopped his SUV in the middle of the road. I pulled up next to him. He wasn't moving, just sitting there, hands on the steering wheel, staring forward. I got out and walked to his window. I knocked. He didn't respond. I opened his door. He turned to look at me. His eyes were red. He said we weren't getting out. He said the pressure must be everywhere now. Bending space in every direction, leading us back. I said there had to be a way. He said there wasn't. He said Derek tried to tell us. Below was the only safe place now. During a sound event, you had to be below. I said I wasn't going down there. He said we might not have a choice. We drove back to camp. The sun was setting. Derek, Paul, and Jen were still sitting by the fire pit. They stood up when we arrived. They walked toward us. Marcus got out of his SUV. I stayed in the RV with the doors locked. I watched through the windshield. Derek spoke to Marcus. I couldn't hear what he said, but Marcus shook his head. Derek pointed toward the forest. Marcus shook his head again. Derek's smile faded. He grabbed Marcus's arm. Marcus tried to pull away. Paul and Jen moved in and grabbed Marcus's other arm. I should have helped. I should have done something. But I didn't. I sat in the RV and watched them drag Marcus toward the trees. He fought. He screamed. They were stronger. Or maybe he was weaker. They pulled him into the forest and disappeared. I sat alone in the RV. Night fell. I didn't turn on any lights. I watched the darkness outside and waited. Around midnight, the sound came again. Louder this time. The RV shook. Windows rattled. The vibration was so intense I felt my teeth buzzing. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. When it stopped, I heard footsteps outside. Someone climbed the steps to my door. A knock. Olivia. Marcus's voice. Open the door. I didn't answer. Olivia, you need to come down. The next sound event will be worse. You won't survive it up here. I looked out the window. 4 shapes stood outside. Marcus had joined them. His voice came again. There's something in the logs about you. Something about your family. You need to see. I didn't move. Your father worked here. Did you know that? 1986 to 1991. He was part of the project. His name is in the logs. He knew what would happen. That's why he left you. That's why... I covered my ears. I didn't want to hear this. My father had left when I was 8. He'd never explained why. I'd spent years wondering if it was my fault. The voice continued, muffled through my hands. I uncovered my ears. In your blood, Olivia. The pressure. It's hereditary. You're special. You could survive below better than any of us. You need to see. I closed my eyes. I thought about my father. The last time I'd seen him, he'd been packing a bag. He'd told me he had to go away for work. He'd be back soon. He never came back. Was this place where he'd gone? Had he worked in those underground rooms? What had they been doing down there? The knocking continued. Marcus's voice, patient and calm. We'll wait, Olivia. We have all the time we need, but the next sound event is in 3 hours. You should come down before then. I spent the next 2 hours sitting at the table trying to think. There had to be a way out. If I waited until just before dawn when they might be less alert, maybe I could make a run for it. Get to the highway and keep walking. Even if the road looped back, maybe eventually the loop would break. Or maybe I could hide. There had to be places in the forest they didn't know about. But I knew I was lying to myself. They'd found us every time we tried to leave. The pressure, or whatever it was, bent space around this place. There was no leaving. The only question was how long I could hold out before the sound events destroyed me or drove me insane. At 2 a.m, I heard movement outside. They were leaving. I watched them walk back toward the forest, all 5 of them moving together. I waited 30 minutes, then got out of the RV. The camp was silent. I walked to the tree line and listened. Nothing. I could leave now, try one more time. Or I could stay here and wait for the next sound event. Or I could go down. I walked through the forest. I found the hatch easily, like it wanted to be found. The opening was dark. I stood at the edge and looked down. I thought about my father. I thought about the logs mentioning me. I thought about spending the rest of my life running in circles, always ending up back here. I climbed down. The concrete room was empty. The second hatch was open. I descended the stairs. At the bottom was a corridor. Doors on both sides. At the end of the corridor was another stairway going deeper. I followed it down. 3 levels below the surface, I found them. They were in a large room with concrete walls and a low ceiling. Equipment lined the walls, old and rusted. In the center was a circular depression in the floor, maybe 20 feet across. It looked like a pool, but it was empty. They were standing around the edge, all 5 of them. When I entered, they turned and smiled. Derek said, "You came." Paul said, "We knew you would." Jen said, "It's in your blood." Marcus said, "Your father understood. You will too." I asked what this place was. Derek walked to a control panel on the wall. He said it was a listening post. They'd been trying to detect something, a signal from below, deep below, in the earth. They'd found it in 1983. A vibration, a pulse. It came every few years, getting stronger each time. They'd built this facility to study it, to understand it. But understanding wasn't enough. The pressure built up. Space distorted. Reality bent. The only safe place during a sound event was down here in the depression, below the threshold. My father had been part of the team. He'd worked here for 5 years. Then something had happened. An incident. He'd fled. Abandoned the project. Abandoned his family. Because he'd seen what happened to people who stayed too long. He'd seen them change. I asked what had changed them. Marcus pointed at the depression in the floor. He said, "Go down there during a sound event and you'll feel it. The pressure, it pushes into you, changes you from the inside, opens you up." I asked what it opened them up to. None of them answered. They just smiled. I heard something then. A vibration, faint, but building. The next sound event was starting. Derek said I should get in the depression. It was the only safe place. I'd see. I'd understand. The vibration grew louder. The walls began to shake. Dust fell from the ceiling. The pressure built in my chest, like something was pushing on my lungs. I walked to the edge of the depression and looked down. It was about 15 feet deep, the bottom smooth concrete. The 5 of them watched me, waiting. The sound was almost unbearable now. I felt like my skull was going to split open. I climbed down into the depression. The moment my feet touched the bottom, the pressure changed. It stopped pushing on me and started pulling, like something below the concrete was trying to drag me down through it. I fell to my knees. The sound peaked. My vision went white. The pulling sensation intensified until I felt like I was being turned inside out. And then something pushed into me. Not physical. Something else. Information, maybe. Or consciousness. I don't have words for it. I saw things. Memories that weren't mine. My father standing in this same depression, experiencing the same thing. The terror on his face. The moment he understood what was happening. The moment he chose to run. And I saw deeper. Below the concrete. Below the rock and soil. Something vast and old and aware. Sleeping, but not quite. Dreaming, and its dreams leaked upward. The pressure was its breath. The sound events were it turning in its sleep. And when it woke, the sound stopped. The pulling sensation released. I was lying on the concrete at the bottom of the depression, gasping. I heard applause. They were clapping. All 5 of them standing at the edge, looking down at me, smiling. Marcus said, "You see now." I did see. I saw what they'd become. The pressure had opened them up, and something had filled the space. Not the thing below. That was too vast. But pieces of it. Fragments of its dream. They were still themselves, but there was something else in there too. Wearing them, using them. And now it was in me. I could feel it. A presence in the back of my mind, whispering, not words, concepts, imperatives. Stay below, bring others, prepare for the waking. I climbed out of the depression. They were waiting. Derek put a hand on my shoulder. He said I was family now. Paul said we had work to do. Jen said more would come, they always did. The pressure bent space, it brought people here. Marcus said I should rest, get my strength back. The next sound event would be in 6 hours. We'd need to be ready. They led me to a side room. There was a cot and a blanket. They left me alone. The door didn't lock. I could leave any time I wanted, but I didn't want to. The presence in my mind was comfortable, warm. It showed me things, futures, possibilities. The thing below waking, rising, the world changing. It showed me my father's future too, where he'd gone after leaving, the ways he'd tried to forget, the drink, the pills, the final decision in a motel room in Nevada. He'd chosen to die rather than stay. I understood why, but I also understood it hadn't mattered. The presence had been in him. It had passed to me through blood. I'd always been marked for this place. Always been coming here. I slept. When I woke, someone was shaking my shoulder. It was Marcus. He said we had visitors. New campers had arrived at the entrance, a family, parents, and 2 kids. He said I should go up and greet them. I was new. I still seemed normal. They'd trust me. I said okay. I walked up through the levels, back through the concrete room, up the ladder, into the forest. It was midday. Sunlight filtered through the trees. I walked back to camp. The RV was still there. Marcus's SUV, the tents, everything looked normal, peaceful. I walked to the entrance. A motorhome was parked by the ranger station. A man was reading the note on the door. A woman and 2 kids were looking at a map. The man saw me and waved. He asked if I worked here. I said no, I was just camping. He asked if it was a good spot. Quiet? Safe? I said yes. Very quiet. Very safe. I said they should take the sites at the far end. Best views. Away from the other campers. He thanked me. They drove past. I watched them go. I should have warned them. I should have told them to leave. But the presence in my mind whispered that it would be okay. They'd understand soon. Everyone would understand, once the waking came. I walked back to the hatch. I climbed down. The others were waiting. They asked if it went well. I said yes. New ones were coming. Derek said good. We needed more. The next sound event would be bigger. We needed to be strong. I asked how long until the waking. Marcus said soon. Maybe weeks, maybe months. But definitely soon. The pressure was building faster now. The sound events were closer together. When it woke, we would be the first, the chosen ones. We'd help it rise. We'd help it spread. I asked what happened after that. None of them answered. They just smiled. I'm writing this on a piece of paper I found in one of the rooms. I don't know if anyone will read it. I don't know if I'll even remember writing it by the time I finish. The presence is getting stronger. It's harder to think my own thoughts. Harder to remember who I was. My name is Olivia Price. I came here on September 14th, 2023. I went down into the hatch. Something changed me. If you're reading this, you're probably at the campground. You probably found the hatch. You're probably thinking about going down. Don't. Or do. It doesn't matter. The pressure bends space. This place pulls people in. You're already here because you were always meant to be here. My father tried to run. It didn't work. I tried to run. It didn't work. Below is the only safe place now. I can feel the next sound event starting. The vibration in my chest. The pulling sensation. We're going down to the depression. All of us. The new family, too. They came down last night. They understand now. I think this is the big one. The waking. If you find this, I'm sorry. I should have done more to stop it, but the presence is so strong now, so warm. It loves us. It wants us to be part of it. We're going down now. Into the depression. Into the embrace. My name is Olivia Price. I was a data analyst. I had a life. I was someone. I don't remember what that feels like anymore. We're going down. The paper was found in 2024 by a Forest Service crew investigating reports of abandoned vehicles at Fish Lake National Forest. The campground had been closed since 2019 due to budget cuts. The vehicles mentioned in the document were found, but no bodies were recovered. A search of the area revealed no underground structures. The coordinates provided in the crew's report correspond to a section of forest with no history of federal installations or geological anomalies. The case remains open but inactive. My name is Tyler Brooks. Last October, my friends and I found a ranger station deep in the Frank Church wilderness that wasn't supposed to be there. The worst part? Someone was still inside. I need to write this down while I still can. While I still remember things the way they actually happened before my mind starts filling in gaps or smoothing over the rough edges. That's what trauma does, right? It either sharpens everything into hyper-clarity, or it blurs it all into a manageable fog. I don't know which one I'm hoping for anymore. We left Boise on a Thursday morning, October 12th. Me, Marcus, Jen, and Alex. 4 friends, 1 rented RV, 2 weeks of vacation time we'd been planning since spring. The idea was simple: disconnect, decompress, maybe do some hiking. Marcus had been talking about the Salmon River area for months. He was the outdoor guy in our group, always showing us photos of trails and campsites, boring us with gear talk at happy hours. The rest of us were more casual about it. Jen worked in tech and hadn't taken real time off in 18 months. Alex taught high school English and needed a break from teenagers. Me, I was a year out from my divorce and my therapist kept suggesting I reconnect with nature or some shit like that. So here we were, adults in our 30s pretending we were still capable of adventure. The RV was bigger than I expected. Marcus insisted on the upgrade, something with a full kitchen and a bathroom that didn't feel like an airplane toilet. We split the cost 4 ways and it still hurt, but whatever. The plan was to stay at an established RV site near the Frank Church wilderness for a few days, then maybe move to different spots along the Salmon River. The drive up was fine. Normal. Marcus drove the first shift while the rest of us settled in, figuring out where everything was stored, arguing about the radio. Jen claimed the bed over the cab. Alex and I took the convertible dinette and couch. Marcus said he'd sleep in the back bedroom since he was the one who'd done all the planning anyway. We stopped for lunch in Stanley, A tiny town that seemed to exist purely for tourists heading to the mountains. The kind of place with one good restaurant, a gas station, and a fly fishing shop. Marcus loaded up on supplies we didn't need. Extra batteries, a better first aid kit, some kind of water purification system. "We're staying at an RV park with full hookups," Jen said. "We're not exactly roughing it." "Better to have it and not need it," Marcus replied, which was basically his life motto. We reached the RV site around 4 in the afternoon. It was called Cottonwood Springs, though I didn't see much in the way of springs or cottonwoods. Just a gravel lot with electrical hookups and a single bathroom building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. There were only 3 other RVs in the entire place, all of them clustered near the entrance like they were seeking safety in numbers. We pulled into a spot at the far end, Marcus backing the RV in with surprising competence. The site gave us a view of the forest, dense pine and fir trees stretching up into the hills. Behind us, the Salmon River was close enough to hear, but not to see through the vegetation. "This is perfect," Marcus said, killing the engine. "Look at this. Middle of nowhere." "There's no cell service," Alex said, staring at their phone. "That's the point," Marcus said. The first evening was normal. We set up our site, figured out the electrical hookup, started a fire in the metal ring. Jen made pasta in the RV's tiny kitchen while the rest of us sat outside with beers. It was cold, proper mountain cold, but the fire helped. Other than the 3 distant RVs, we saw no one. No rangers came by to check on us. No one walked past on the way to the bathroom. "Kinda dead here," I said. "It's off-season," Marcus explained. "Most people come in summer or early fall. We're catching the tail end." We ate dinner outside, bundled in jackets, and then retreated into the RV when the temperature dropped further. Marcus found a deck of cards, and we played poker with M&Ms as chips until Jen fell asleep mid-hand. Alex and I gave up around 11. Marcus stayed up reading some hiking book by headlamp. I slept fine that first night. The RV was warm and the bed was comfortable enough. No dreams I could remember. Friday morning, Marcus had a plan. Of course he did. "There's a trail about 3 miles up the road," he said over coffee. "Goes up into the hills, follows a creek. Should be an easy day hike, maybe 6 or 7 miles round trip." "I didn't come here to hike," Jen said. "Then stay here and read," Marcus said. "But we drove 6 hours to be in the mountains. Seems like a waste to just sit in a parking lot." Alex and I exchanged looks. The thing about Marcus was that he was usually right and he knew it, which made him insufferable about 50% of the time. "I'll go," I said. "Might be nice." Alex shrugged. "Sure, why not?" Jen held out for another 10 minutes before agreeing, mostly because she didn't want to be left alone at the RV site. We packed light, just water, some snacks, a basic first aid kit that Marcus insisted on. We drove the 3 miles to the trailhead in the RV, which felt ridiculous but was easier than trying to walk along the narrow road. The trailhead was empty, just a small gravel pullout with a weathered sign pointing into the trees. The sign said Creek Trail and listed a distance of 2 miles to overlook. Someone had graffitied a dick onto the sign, real classy. We started hiking around 10 in the morning. The trail was well maintained at first, clear and wide, marked with occasional blue blazes on the trees. The forest was quiet except for the sound of the creek to our left, running cold and fast over rocks. Marcus led because of course he did. Then Jen, then me, with Alex bringing up the rear. For the first hour it was actually pleasant, the kind of thing my therapist probably had in mind. Trees, fresh air, moderate exercise. My mind wandered to normal things. Work emails I'd have when we got back, whether I needed to change the oil in my car, what I'd make for dinner next week. Then the trail started to climb and my legs remembered I wasn't 25 anymore. "How much further?" Jen asked. Marcus checked his watch, which had GPS even though his phone didn't work out here. Maybe another 1.5 miles to the overlook. We kept going. The trees got denser, the trail narrower. The blazes were fewer and further between. At one point, Alex stopped and pointed. "Is that the trail?" They were indicating a fork we'd almost passed, an unmarked path branching off to the right. Marcus consulted his phone's saved map. No, we go straight. That's probably just a game trail or something. We continued on the main trail for another 20 minutes. That's when things started feeling off, though I couldn't have told you why at the time. Maybe it was how quiet it had gotten. No birds, no wind, just our footsteps and breathing. Or maybe it was the way the light filtered through the trees, creating shadows that seemed too dark, too solid. This doesn't look right, Jen said, stopping. Marcus turned around, annoyed. What do you mean? I mean the trail, it's not on your map anymore. Marcus looked at his watch, frowned, tapped the screen. GPS is glitching. Must be the tree cover. Or we took a wrong turn, I said. We didn't take a wrong turn. There haven't been any turns. But Jen was right. The trail had narrowed to barely a footpath and the blazes had disappeared entirely. The forest around us looked older, the trees thicker, the undergrowth denser. We should head back, Alex said quietly. It's fine, Marcus insisted. The overlook has to be close. We've hiked almost 3 miles. According to a GPS that's currently not working, Jen pointed out. They argued for a few minutes while I looked around. Something caught my eye through the trees, a straight line where there shouldn't be one. Nature doesn't do straight lines. I walked off the trail, pushing through some bushes. Tyler, where are you going? Marcus called. There's something here. I emerged into a small clearing and stopped. In front of me stood a building. It was a ranger station, or at least it looked like one. Small, maybe 20 by 30 feet, built from weathered logs that had gone gray with age. A peaked roof covered in old shingles, some of them missing. 2 windows flanking a central door, both windows dark. A covered porch ran along the front, and on the porch sat 2 rocking chairs. The others crashed through the bushes behind me. What the hell? Marcus said. The building looked old but not abandoned in the usual way. The windows were intact. The door was closed, not hanging open. The porch wasn't collapsed. It looked like someone might have used it recently, even though everything about it suggested decades of neglect. That's not on the map, Marcus said, checking his watch again. There's no structure marked anywhere near here. Maybe it's too old, Jen suggested. If it predates digital mapping. The map shows old structures, Marcus interrupted. Abandoned mines, cabins, everything. This isn't on it. Alex walked closer, stopping at the edge of the porch. The door's not locked. They were right. The door hung slightly ajar, maybe an inch, just enough to show darkness inside. We should check it out, Marcus said, already moving forward. Why? Jen asked. It's clearly abandoned. Let's just head back. Because it's weird. Don't you think it's weird? A whole ranger station that's not on any map? That's exactly why we should leave it alone, I said. But Marcus was already climbing the porch steps. The wood didn't creak. That struck me as odd immediately. Old wood always creaks. These boards were silent under his weight, as if they'd been too worn down to remember how to make noise. Marcus pushed the door open wider. Hello? Anyone here? No response. He pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped inside. The rest of us followed because, well, what else were we going to do? The interior was a single large room. At one end stood a desk, and behind it, filing cabinets. At the other end was a small kitchen area, a sink, a counter, a 2-burner stove that probably ran on propane. In between was a wooden table with 4 chairs. Everything was covered in dust, but not as much as you'd expect. More like weeks of neglect rather than years. The weirdest part was how intact everything was. Papers sat in neat stacks on the desk. Coffee mugs rested on the counter, one of them still half full with liquid so old it had gone solid. A calendar hung on the wall, showing August 2003. 20 years old, Alex said, looking at the calendar. But this place doesn't look 20 years abandoned. Marcus was rifling through the papers on the desk. These are all ranger logs, trail conditions, weather reports, visitor contacts. Last entry is... He squinted at a page. August 19th, 2003. What happened on August 19th, 2003? Jen asked. Marcus scanned the entry. Ranger P. Morrison reporting unusual trail closures. Multiple hikers report disorientation on Creek Trail. Recommend closure pending investigation. Then it just stops. Creek Trail, I said. That's what we're on. We're on, Jen corrected. We're clearly not on it anymore. I wandered to the filing cabinets, pulled open a drawer. It was full of folders, all labeled with dates and names. I pulled one out at random. May 1998. Inside were handwritten notes about wildlife sightings, maintenance schedules, routine stuff. I pulled out another. July 2001. More of the same. Look at this, Alex said from the corner. They'd found a corkboard covered in yellowed papers. Pinned to it were notices, memos, and one large map of the area. Alex pointed to a spot marked with a red X. That's where we are, or close to it. Marcus came over, studied the map. There's nothing marking a ranger station here. So someone built it off the books? Jen suggested. Why would anyone do that? None of us had an answer. We stood in the dusty room, four people who were increasingly aware that we'd stumbled onto something that didn't make sense. That's when we heard it, a sound from outside. Footsteps on the porch. We all froze. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, moving from one end of the porch to the other. They stopped directly in front of the door. Through the crack, I could see a shadow, human-shaped, blocking the light. "Hello?" Marcus called out. The shadow didn't move, didn't respond, just stood there, perfectly still. Marcus walked to the door, grabbed the handle and pulled it open. Nothing. The porch was empty. The forest beyond was silent. "I heard it," Jen said. We all heard it. "Wind?" Alex suggested, but their voice was uncertain. "There's no wind," I said. We stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty porch. Then Marcus shook his head, trying to dispel whatever unease had settled over us. "Let's take some photos and get out of here. I want to look into this when we get back." We spent a few more minutes documenting the place. Marcus photographed the logs, the calendar, the map. Jen checked the cabinets, but found nothing interesting. Alex and I stepped back outside, neither of us wanting to be in that building any longer than necessary. "This feels wrong," Alex said quietly once we were on the porch. "Yeah. I mean really wrong. Like we're not supposed to be here." I looked at them. Alex wasn't the type to speak up often, but when they did, it was usually worth listening to. "You want to head back?" "I wanted to head back 20 minutes ago." Marcus and Jen emerged from the building. Marcus was still studying something on his phone, frowning. "The GPS is completely dead now," he said, "not even registering satellites." "Great," Jen muttered. "So how do we get back?" "We retrace our steps. It's not complicated. We just follow our tracks back to the main trail." Except it was complicated because when we looked behind us toward where we'd entered the clearing, we couldn't see our tracks. The undergrowth showed no signs of being disturbed. It was as if we'd appeared in the clearing by magic rather than walking through the forest. "That's impossible," Jen said. "We literally just came through there." Marcus walked to the tree line, searching for any sign of our passage. "Maybe we came from a different direction." "We didn't," I said. "It was there, right there." We spent 15 minutes circling the clearing, looking for the way we'd come in. Nothing. Every direction looked the same. Dense forest, no obvious trails, no marks to indicate passage. "Okay," Marcus said finally. "This is officially weird, but let's not panic. We know we came from the east, so we head east." "How do you know which way is east without GPS?" Jen asked. Marcus pointed at the sun, barely visible through the canopy. "It's past noon, so that's west. East is behind us." "You mean the direction where the ranger station is," I said. "Away from the ranger station," Marcus corrected. "East, away from the station." We started walking. Marcus led, using the sun when he could see it, guessing when he couldn't. We walked for 30 minutes, then an hour. The forest didn't change. We found no trail, no creek, nothing that looked familiar. "We should have hit the trail by now," Jen said. "We weren't that far off it." "Unless we're going in circles," Alex suggested. We're not going in circles. I'm watching our direction. But I was starting to wonder if Alex was right. The trees all looked the same. Had we passed that fallen log before? That distinctive rock formation? I couldn't be sure. Another hour passed. The sun was getting lower, the forest darker. My legs ached, and my water bottle was nearly empty. Stop, I said. We need to stop and think. Marcus turned around, his face flushed with exertion and frustration. Think about what? We keep going east until we hit something recognizable. We've been walking for 2 hours and seen nothing. No trail, no creek, no road. Does that seem right to you? What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we're lost. The word hung between us. Lost. None of us wanted to admit it, but there it was. We should go back to the ranger station, Alex said. At least we know where that is. How? Jen asked. We don't know which direction it's in. We do, though, Alex said, pointing behind us. It's west. We've been walking east, so it's directly behind us. Marcus shook his head. If we go back there, we'll still be lost. At least this way we're trying to find the trail. And if we don't find it before dark? I asked. That shut him up. The truth was, we had maybe 3 hours of daylight left, and we were thoroughly disoriented. Going back to the ranger station at least gave us shelter for the night. We argued for a few more minutes, but eventually Marcus gave in. We turned around and started walking west, or what we hoped was west. The sun was less helpful now, obscured by clouds that had rolled in while we weren't paying attention. We walked for what felt like ages. My watch said 40 minutes, but time had stopped feeling reliable. When we finally stumbled back into the clearing, I felt both relief and dread. The ranger station stood exactly as we'd left it. Door still open, porch still empty. At least we found something, Marcus said, trying to sound optimistic. We climbed back onto the porch. The sun was definitely setting now, the clearing filling with long shadows. No one suggested going further today. We were tired, confused, and needed to regroup. Inside, we found a propane lantern and got it working. The light helped, pushing back some of the unease. Marcus distributed the last of our water and the snacks we'd brought, granola bars and some trail mix. Not a proper dinner, but it would have to do. First thing tomorrow, Marcus said. We follow the sun due east. Don't deviate, don't second guess. Straight east until we hit the road or the creek or something. And if we don't? Jen asked. We will. I wasn't so sure, but I didn't argue. We arranged ourselves around the room for sleep. The floor was hard and dusty, but we were too exhausted to care. Marcus took the first watch, sitting by one of the windows with his phone flashlight. The rest of us tried to sleep. I drifted in and out, never quite achieving real rest. Every creak of the building jerked me awake. The wind had picked up, making sounds against the walls. Or at least, I thought it was the wind. Around what must have been 2 or 3 in the morning, I heard Marcus swear softly. I sat up. What is it? He was at the window looking out into the darkness. I thought I saw someone. Where? By the tree line. Just for a second. But it's too dark to be sure. I joined him at the window. The clearing was barely visible, just a slightly lighter shade of black than the surrounding forest. I stared for a long time, seeing nothing. Probably an animal, I said. Maybe. But he didn't sound convinced, and neither was I. Morning came slowly, gray light filtering through the windows. We were all awake by 6, stiff and sore from sleeping on the hard floor. No one had slept well. Alex looked particularly haggard, dark circles under their eyes. Bad dreams? I asked. I kept hearing voices, they said, like people talking just outside. But when I'd wake up, there was nothing. Jen had heard them too. So had I, though I'd convinced myself it was just the wind or my imagination. Only Marcus claimed he'd heard nothing, but he'd been on watch most of the night. We went outside. The morning was cold and misty, the kind of mountain morning that feels more like evening. The clearing looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow, more confined. The trees seemed closer. "Everyone ready?" Marcus asked. He was trying to sound confident, but I could hear the strain in his voice. We set out, Marcus checking the sun's position and leading us east. This time, we all paid close attention to our surroundings, looking for any landmarks or features. We marked trees as we passed, using rocks to scratch arrows into the bark. An hour passed, then 2. The forest remained unchanging, identical in every direction. My sense of unease grew with each step. That's when Jen noticed. "We're back." "What?" She pointed at a tree. On its trunk was an arrow scratched into the bark. "That's one of our marks. We're back where we started." "That's impossible," Marcus said. "We've been walking in a straight line." But there was the mark, undeniable. And as we looked around, we saw others, arrows pointing east away from where we now stood. "How is this happening?" Jen's voice was rising, panic creeping in. "How are we going in circles when we're walking straight?" None of us had an answer. We stood in the forest, surrounded by our own trail markers, evidence of our complete failure to escape. Alex spoke quietly. "Something's wrong here. Really wrong. This isn't normal disorientation." "What are you saying?" Marcus demanded. "That the forest is magic? That we're trapped by, what, ghosts?" "I'm saying something is wrong and we need to accept that." We made our way back to the ranger station again. We didn't need to navigate. Our marked trees led us straight there, a perfect circle back to the clearing. Inside, we sat around the table, no one speaking for a long time. Finally, Marcus pulled out his phone. "There's no signal, but I'm going to write down everything we know. Facts only." He started typing. We'd arrived Thursday, hiked Friday morning, found the station around noon, got lost trying to leave. Multiple attempts to head east had brought us back. Time, Saturday morning, roughly 10 a.m. "We're missing for how long?" Jen asked. "Not missing yet," Marcus said. "We told everyone we'd be gone 2 weeks. No one will look for us for days." That sat heavy in the room. Days before anyone would even start to worry. Days alone in this clearing, unable to leave. "We should explore the station more thoroughly," I suggested. "Maybe there's something that explains this. Radio equipment, ranger logs, anything." We split up the search. Marcus and Jen took the desk and filing cabinets. Alex and I searched the kitchen and storage areas. At first, we found nothing unusual. More logs, old supplies, everything coated in that strange, not quite abandoned dust. Then Alex called out, "Tyler, come here." They were in a corner I'd missed where a tarp covered something bulky. Alex had pulled back part of the tarp, revealing what looked like radio equipment, an old transmitter and receiver setup. "Does it work?" I asked. Alex flipped a switch. Nothing happened. They checked connections, finding a battery pack that was long dead. "Even if we had power, I don't know how to use this. It's ancient." Marcus and Jen joined us. Marcus immediately started examining the equipment, poking at dials and buttons. "This is military surplus," we said. "Probably from the 80s. If we could get power to it." "How?" Jen interrupted. "There's no electricity here. The stove runs on propane. Maybe there's a generator somewhere." We searched the building again, this time looking for power sources. We found nothing inside, but behind the station, half hidden under a lean-to structure, sat a portable generator. It was old, covered in rust, but when Marcus checked the fuel tank, it was half full. "This might work," he said. It took us 30 minutes to get the generator started and another 20 to connect it to the radio equipment. When Marcus finally flipped the switch, the radio crackled to life, filling the station with static. "Yes." Marcus started adjusting frequencies, scanning through channels. Static, static, static. Then, faintly, a voice. "Anyone copy? This is Ranger Morrison, Station 12. Does anyone copy?" We all froze. Marcus grabbed the microphone. "Hello? This is Marcus Webb. We're at a ranger station. We're lost. We need help. Over." Static. Then the voice again. Clearer now. "Station 12, repeat. You said you're lost? What's your location?" "We don't know," Marcus said. We were hiking Creek Trail and found an old ranger station. We've been trying to leave, but keep ending up back here. Can you send help? Long pause. Static. Then, Creek Trail closed in 2003. No ranger station on Creek Trail. Who is this? Marcus exchanged looks with us. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm here with 3 friends. We've been lost for 2 days. Please, we need help. Another pause, even longer. When the voice came back, it sounded different, strained. Who gave you access to this frequency? Access? No one. We found a radio and... This is a closed frequency. You need to identify yourself properly or disconnect immediately. I did identify myself. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm lost in Frank Church Wilderness and I need help. Static. Then the voice, now cold. There is no one by that name in our registry. Disconnect immediately. Wait, please. The radio went dead. Marcus tried every frequency, every channel. Nothing. Just static. What the hell was that? Jen asked. I don't know, but did you hear how they talked? Like we were the ones doing something wrong? We tried the radio several more times throughout the afternoon, but got nothing except static. The strange conversation played over and over in my mind. Station 12. Ranger Morrison. A closed frequency. None of it made sense. As the sun set again, we prepared for another night in the station. This time, we were more organized. We found old blankets in a storage closet that were musty but usable. We rationed our remaining snacks. We set up a watch schedule, 2 people at a time. Alex and I took the first shift, from sunset until midnight. We sat by the windows, watching the darkness deepen around the clearing. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then Alex touched my arm. Look, at the edge of the clearing, barely visible in the darkness, was a light. Not a flashlight, more like a lantern moving slowly through the trees. It would disappear behind trunks, reappear, moving in a pattern that made no sense. Not toward us, not away, just moving. Should we wake the others? Alex whispered. Let's watch it for a minute. The light continued its aimless wandering. Then, suddenly it stopped. It hung in the air perfectly still, aimed directly at the ranger station, aimed at us. I don't like this, Alex said. Neither did I. We sat frozen as the light stayed fixed on us. Minutes passed. Then it began to move again, but this time purposefully heading straight toward the station. I woke Marcus and Jen immediately. By the time they stumbled to the window, the light was halfway across the clearing. We could see it clearly now, definitely a lantern, old-fashioned, the kind with a flame inside, but we couldn't see who was carrying it. Who's there? Marcus called out. The light stopped. It swayed slightly, as if the person holding it was considering the question. Then it continued forward, reaching the edge of the porch. The steps creaked as something climbed them. We heard footsteps crossing the porch, slow and deliberate. They stopped at the door. A knock. 3 sharp raps. None of us moved. The knock came again, harder this time. What do we do? Jen whispered. We can't just not answer, Marcus said, but he made no move toward the door. A third knock, and this time a voice. Let me in. It was a man's voice, rough and tired. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't place it. Who are you? Marcus called through the door. Ranger Morrison. This is my station. Let me in. We looked at each other. Ranger Morrison. The name from the radio. The name from the logs that ended in 2003. Prove it, Marcus said. Silence then. I don't need to prove anything. This is my station. The logs say this station was abandoned in 2003. The logs are wrong. Let me in. There was something off about the voice, something that made my skin crawl. It sounded right, but felt wrong, like someone doing an impression of a human voice, rather than actually being human. We're not opening the door, I said. The footsteps moved away, walking along the porch. The light appeared at the window. Through the glass, I could see the lantern clearly now, but the hand holding it was in shadow. The light moved to the next window, then back to the door. You're in my station, the voice said. You need to let me in. No, Marcus said firmly. The knocking started again, but this time it didn't stop. Knock after knock, rhythmic and insistent. It went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, abruptly, it stopped. We waited, listening. Footsteps moved away across the porch, down the steps. The light retreated across the clearing and disappeared into the trees. None of us slept the rest of that night. Sunday morning came too bright, like the world was mocking our exhaustion and fear. We were all running on adrenaline now, snapping at each other over small things. The food was gone. Water was gone. We needed to get out today, or things would get serious fast. We're trying something different, Marcus announced. We're going to walk west. Toward the station, Jen said. That doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. But we've tried east 3 times and ended up back here. Maybe the trick is to go the opposite direction. It was desperate logic, but we had nothing else. We set out west, into the forest opposite the clearing. For the first time, the trees felt different, older, darker, more oppressive. We walked for an hour in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. That's when Marcus stopped suddenly. Do you hear that? We listened. Running water. A creek. The creek, Jen said. We can follow it back to the trail. We hurried toward the sound, pushing through undergrowth that grabbed at our clothes. The creek appeared, cold, clear water running over rocks. We could see fish in it. Normal, real fish. Which way? Alex asked. Marcus studied the flow. Downhill, downstream. It has to lead somewhere. We followed the creek. After 2 hours, exhausted and scraped from bushes, we emerged onto a trail. A real trail, with blazes and everything. This is it, Marcus said. This is Creek Trail. I recognize this section. We practically ran down the trail. It led us through familiar forest, past landmarks we remembered from Friday. When we finally reached the trailhead parking area, we stopped and stared. The RV was gone. What the fuck? Marcus said. The pullout where we'd parked was empty. No RV, no tire tracks, nothing. Just gravel and forest. Someone stole it? Jen suggested weakly. Or we're at the wrong trailhead, I said, but we weren't. There was the same graffitied sign, the same configuration of trees. This was definitely where we'd parked 3 days ago. We walked the 3 miles back to Cottonwood Springs RV park in a daze. When we arrived, we stopped at the entrance, confused. The other 3 RVs we'd seen were gone. The entire lot was empty except for one vehicle, a park ranger truck. A woman in a ranger uniform approached us. She looked concerned. Can I help you folks? We're looking for our RV, Marcus said. We parked here Thursday. The ranger frowned. This facility closed for the season 2 weeks ago. There haven't been any RVs here since early October. That's impossible, Jen said. We were here. Thursday, October 12th. We rented a spot, parked our RV right there. She pointed to where we'd been. The ranger's expression shifted to something like pity. Today is October 15th. If you were here Thursday, that was 3 days ago. But like I said, we've been closed. No one's been here. 3 days, I repeated. We've been gone 3 days? We need to call someone, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. The rental company, the police, someone. Our RV is missing. His phone showed signal now. Full bars. He dialed, spoke to someone, his voice rising as he tried to explain. The ranger watched us with growing concern, probably wondering if we were on drugs or having some kind of collective breakdown. A police officer arrived within 30 minutes, then another. We told our story, the hike, the ranger station, getting lost, the strange radio call, the figure on the porch. They listened with expressions that grew more skeptical with each detail. We'll look into the missing vehicle, one officer said. But I need to ask, have any of you been using substances? Mushrooms grow in these woods, and people sometimes pick them without knowing what they are. We're not high, Marcus said. Have you eaten anything unusual? Berries, plants, nothing. We brought our own food. They asked us to describe the ranger station's location. We tried, but realized we couldn't. Somewhere off Creek Trail to the west, maybe 3 miles from the trailhead. It was all vague. The officers exchanged looks that said everything about what they thought of our story. They drove us to the nearest town, took statements, and started a search for the RV. We gave them the rental company information, our identification, everything. Then we waited. The RV turned up 6 hours later. It was parked at Cottonwood Springs, exactly where we'd left it. The ranger who'd found it looked confused. "I checked this lot twice today. It wasn't here before." We went back with the police. The RV was locked, undisturbed. Inside, everything was exactly as we'd left it Thursday morning. Jen's book on the table, coffee cups in the sink, our beds unmade. "So what's the problem?" one officer asked. "You parked it here, you left it here, it's still here." "It wasn't here an hour ago," Marcus insisted. "Maybe you were looking in the wrong spot." We couldn't explain it. The police made notes about possible confusion due to exhaustion and stress, suggested we get medical checkups, and left. The rental company was just happy the RV hadn't actually been stolen. That night we sat inside the RV, doors locked, trying to process what had happened. None of us could explain it. We checked our phones. It was October 15th, Sunday evening. We'd lost 3 days, but also hadn't because the RV showed no signs of being abandoned. The food we'd left out Thursday morning should have spoiled by now, but it was fine. "We should leave," Jen said. "Right now. Drive back to Boise and pretend this never happened." Marcus was looking at his phone, scrolling through something. "The ranger station. I photographed it, remember? I photographed everything." He showed us his phone. The photos were there, the desk, the logs, the calendar, the radio equipment. Proof we hadn't hallucinated the whole thing. "We need to go back," he said. "Absolutely not," I said. "We need to understand what happened. Something is out there and we need—" "No," Jen interrupted. "We don't need anything except to leave. Now." Alex had been quiet, staring at their reflection in the RV's window. Now they spoke, their voice strange. "We can't leave." "What do you mean we can't leave?" I asked. They turned to look at us, and something was wrong. Their eyes looked different, darker, or maybe it was just the lighting. "We're not done here yet." "Alex?" Jen said. "Are you okay?" Alex smiled. It was wrong, completely wrong. Too wide, too knowing. "I'm fine. Better than fine. But we need to go back." Marcus stood up. "Back where?" "To the station. That's where we belong." The way they said belong made my skin crawl. I looked at Marcus and Jen, saw my own fear reflected in their faces. "Alex," I said carefully, "what happened to you out there?" They tilted their head, still smiling that wrong smile. "Nothing happened. I just finally understand." "Understand what? Why we can't leave? Why we're not supposed to leave?" Jen stood up slowly, edging toward the door. "I think we need to get Alex to a hospital." Alex's expression changed, the smile dropping away into something cold. "You can try to run, it won't matter. We all end up back there eventually. I did." "You didn't go back," Marcus said. "We've been together this whole time." "Have we?" Alex looked at each of us in turn. "Are you sure? Are you really sure?" And that's when I noticed. Alex's clothes were different. When we'd left the station, they'd been wearing a green jacket. Now it was gray, and their boots, those weren't the ones they'd started the trip with. "When did you change?" I asked. "I didn't." "Your jacket, your boots, they're different." Alex looked down at themselves, then back up at us and smiled again. "You're right. These aren't mine. They're P. Morrison's. He doesn't need them anymore." Marcus moved fast, grabbing his keys. "We're leaving, all of us, now." But when he tried the door, it wouldn't open. The lock wouldn't turn. He tried the other door, the emergency window, everything. The RV had become a sealed box. Alex laughed. It sounded like wind through dead trees. "I told you, we're not done yet." We spent that night trapped in the RV, watching Alex, or whatever Alex had become. They sat perfectly still in one chair, not moving, barely breathing. just watching us with those wrong eyes. None of us slept. We couldn't. The sun rose Monday morning. The doors opened on their own. "Time to go," Alex said, standing up. They walked out of the RV. Marcus tried to stop them, but the moment he touched Alex's arm, he jerked back like he'd been shocked. "Don't touch me," Alex said. "Not anymore." They started walking into the forest. We followed because what else could we do? Leave Alex alone. Call the police and explain that our friend was possessed or replaced or whatever had happened. Alex led us through the trees with perfect confidence, never hesitating. After an hour, we emerged into the clearing. The ranger station stood waiting. "No," Jen said, backing away. "I'm not going in there." "You don't have a choice," Alex said. The door swung open by itself. Inside, everything looked the same as we'd left it. The radio equipment, the logs, the dust. But now there was someone sitting at the desk. He was an old man, or he had been once. Now he was something else. Something that wore a ranger uniform that had gone gray with age. He looked up at us and smiled. "Welcome back," he said. His voice was the one from the radio, the one from the porch. "I've been waiting." Marcus tried to run, but the door slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. The old man stood up. His movements were wrong, jerky, like a puppet with tangled strings. "You found my station. That means you belong here now. That's how it works." "How what works?" I asked, my voice shaking. "The station. It needs rangers. It always needs more rangers." He gestured at Alex, who had moved to stand beside him. "Your friend understands now. They came back during the night. They're mine now." "That's not Alex," Jen said. "It is. Just improved." The old man walked closer to us. With each step, he seemed to become less solid, more like a shadow. "You'll all be improved soon. You'll understand. You'll want to stay." Marcus grabbed my arm. "The radio. We need to use the radio." We ran for it, but the old man was faster than he looked. He appeared in front of us, blocking the way. "That won't help. No one answers anymore. No one except me," Jen screamed. I turned to see Alex touching her face, and where they touched, Jen's skin turned gray. She tried to pull away, but Alex held on, smiling that terrible smile. "It doesn't hurt," Alex said. "I promise. It's actually better. You'll see." I grabbed a chair and swung it at the old man. It passed through him like he wasn't there. He laughed, a sound like wind through a grave. Marcus and I ran for the door. It opened this time, and we stumbled out into the clearing. Behind us we could hear Jen screaming, then the screaming stopped, replaced by laughter. Wrong laughter. We ran into the forest. Behind us, footsteps followed. Alex and Jen moving fast, calling our names in voices that were almost right but not quite. We ran until we couldn't run anymore, until our lungs burned and our legs gave out. We hid in a hollow beneath a fallen tree, pressing ourselves into the dark space, trying not to breathe too loud. The footsteps passed by, stopped, came back. "Tyler. Marcus?" It was Jen's voice, but wrong. "We just want to talk. Come out." We stayed silent. The footsteps moved away, but we knew they were still out there searching. Night fell. We waited in the hollow, not speaking. At some point, I must have dozed off despite myself. When I woke, Marcus was gone. I crawled out of the hollow, calling his name in a whisper. No response. I was alone. I wandered through the forest until dawn, looking for Marcus, looking for anything that made sense. Instead, I found the ranger station again. The clearing was empty. The building stood silent. I approached carefully. The door was open. Inside, I found them. Marcus sat at the desk writing in one of the logbooks. Jen stood by the radio. Alex was at the window. The old man was nowhere to be seen. They all turned to look at me as I entered. They all wore the same smile. "We've been waiting for you," Marcus said. "We're almost complete." "There's one more person who needs to come home," Jen added. I backed away, but the door was closed again. I didn't remember it closing. "You can't fight it," Alex said. "We all tried. We all failed. This is where we belong now." Where you belong. They moved toward me, reaching out. I pressed myself against the wall, looking for any way out. That's when I saw it. The radio. Still on, still connected to the generator. I lunged for it, grabbed the microphone. "This is Tyler Brooks. If anyone can hear me, we need help. Cottonwood Springs, Frank Church Wilderness, please, someone." Static. Then faintly, a voice. "This is the ranger station receiving. What's your emergency?" "There's something wrong here. My friends are..." Marcus grabbed the microphone from me. "False alarm. Sorry. Everything's fine." He switched off the radio. The others surrounded me, their hands cold on my arms and face. The thing is, they were right. It doesn't hurt. It's actually better in a lot of ways. You don't feel hungry or tired or afraid anymore. You just feel right. Like you're where you're supposed to be. I'm writing this now from the ranger station. My handwriting looks different, I know. Gray pencil on gray paper. Marcus and Jen and Alex are here with me. We're waiting for the next group of hikers. They usually come in October. They always find us eventually. The station needs rangers. It always needs more rangers. If you're reading this, if you found this somehow, don't come to Cottonwood Springs. Don't look for Creek Trail. Don't try to find the ranger station that doesn't exist on any map. But you will, won't you? That's how it works. We'll be waiting when you do. Welcome home. My name is Michael Green. I'm 42 years old, work in IT, and I've never believed in anything I couldn't explain with logic. That changed 3 weeks ago at an RV park near Caddo Lake, Texas. I'd taken a week off to clear my head after the divorce was finalized. Sarah got the house, I got Cooper, my 5-year-old German Shepherd, and we both agreed that was fair. I rented a small RV, the kind with a bed over the cab and a cramped kitchenette, and drove south from Dallas. I'd heard Caddo Lake was quiet this time of year, early November, and I wanted quiet. The RV park was called Cypress Haven, though there wasn't much haven about it. 12 sites total, most of them empty when I arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The owner, a woman named Linda who looked about 60, checked me in from a small office that smelled like cigarette smoke and fried food. She took my credit card information and asked if I needed firewood. "We've got bundles for $8, she said. "You're in Site 7. It's the one closest to the trailhead if you want to walk your dog." I bought 2 bundles and drove the RV down a gravel road that wound between pine trees and Spanish moss. Site 7 was at the end, backing up to a wall of dense forest. There was a concrete pad for the RV, a fire ring made of stacked stones, and a weathered picnic table. The site next to mine, Site 8, was empty. So was Site 6. In fact, from what I could see, only 2 other sites appeared occupied, one near the office and another halfway down the road. I got the RV leveled and hooked up to the electrical post. Cooper sniffed around the perimeter of the site, marked a few trees, then came back to lie in the shade under the picnic table. It was warm for November, probably 75 degrees, and the humidity made everything feel sticky. That first night was fine. I made a sandwich for dinner, gave Cooper his kibble, and built a small fire. I didn't see anyone else. At some point I heard a car start up near the office, and then it was just crickets and the occasional splash from the lake. I went to bed around 10. I found the diary on Friday morning. Cooper needed to go out early, before sunrise. I clipped on his leash and we walked down the trail that started behind my site. It wasn't much of a trail, more like a path that had been worn into the undergrowth by other people walking their dogs. The trees were thick with vines, and the ground was soft, almost spongy. After about 5 minutes, the trail opened into a small clearing where someone had left an old aluminum lawn chair. Cooper pulled toward a fallen log at the edge of the clearing, and that's when I saw it. A small notebook, maybe 5 by 7 inches, lying on the ground next to the log. The cover was brown leather, water-stained and dirty. I almost didn't pick it up, but I did. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was neat, almost careful. "This diary belongs to whoever needs it. Read it. Believe it. You won't, but you should." The second page had a date written at the top, November 11th. That was today. Friday, November 11th. Below the date, You'll find this diary in the clearing behind Site 7. You have a dog with you. His name is Cooper. I stopped reading. I looked around the clearing, half expecting to see someone watching me from the trees. The forest was quiet. Cooper was sniffing the log, oblivious. I should have left the diary there. I should have walked back to my RV and forgotten about it. Instead, I kept reading. You won't believe this is real. You'll think it's a prank. But everything written here will happen. Today, you'll meet a man named Carl at Site 3. He'll offer you a beer at 4:17 p.m. Don't drink it. Tonight at 11:43 p.m., you'll hear something moving around your RV. Don't look outside. Tomorrow, November 12th, someone will arrive at Site 8. She'll tell you her name is Ruth. She's lying. The entries went on for pages. Specific times, specific events. I flipped ahead and saw dates going all the way to November 17th, 6 days from now. The last entry was dated November 17th, 11:59 p.m. It was only 2 words. You're next. I closed the diary and stood there for a minute trying to think. This had to be a joke. Someone messing with a stranger at an RV park. But how did they know my dog's name? And how did they know I'd find this diary at this exact spot on this exact morning? I walked back to my RV, Cooper trotting beside me. The sun was coming up and I could hear birds starting to make noise in the trees. I put the diary on the table inside the RV and stared at it while I made coffee. At 10:00 a.m. I drove into the nearest town, Marshall, about 15 miles away, and bought groceries. When I got back to Cypress Haven, there was a truck parked at Site 3 that hadn't been there before. An old Ford with Louisiana plates. I told myself it was a coincidence. At 4:15 p.m., I was sitting outside my RV, reading a book I'd brought but not really paying attention to the words. Cooper was asleep at my feet. A man came walking down the gravel road from Site 3. He was probably in his 60s, sunburned and wearing a saint's cap. "Afternoon," he said. "You just get in yesterday?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm Carl, Site 3. He introduced himself as Carl. I felt my stomach tighten. "You want a beer?" he asked, holding up a 6-pack of Coors Light. "I've got too many." I looked at my watch. It was 4:17 p.m. "No thanks," I said. "I'm good." Carl shrugged. "Suit yourself. Let me know if you need anything. I've been coming here for 10 years. I know the area pretty well." He walked back to his site. I sat there, my hands shaking, and picked up the diary again. The entry for 11:43 p.m. said I'd hear something moving around my RV. It told me not to look outside. I tried to think rationally. Maybe Carl had talked to the park owner. Maybe she'd mentioned my dog's name when she checked me in. Maybe Carl had been the one to write the diary and plant it in the clearing. But why? What would be the point? I went inside the RV at 11:30 p.m. and locked the door. Cooper was on the floor by the bed, already asleep. I sat at the small table with the diary open in front of me, watching the clock on my phone. 11:40 p.m., 11:42 p.m. At 11:43 p.m., I heard footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, circling the RV. Not running, not hurried, just walking. One step, then another, crunching on the gravel. Cooper's ears perked up, but he didn't bark. That bothered me more than the footsteps. Cooper always barked at strangers. The footsteps stopped near the door. I heard breathing, soft, steady, like someone standing just outside. Then the footsteps started again, moving toward the back of the RV. I wanted to look outside. Every instinct told me to pull back the curtain and see who was there. But the diary had said not to look. The footsteps continued for maybe 3 minutes, then they stopped. I waited another 10 minutes before I got up the courage to pull back the curtain just an inch. There was no one outside. I didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I went outside and checked the ground around the RV. There were footprints in the gravel, boot prints size 11 or 12. But they didn't lead anywhere. They circled the RV twice and then just stopped, right in the middle of the clearing, like whoever made them had vanished. I read the next entry in the diary. November 12th. Someone will arrive at Site 8 around 2:00 p.m. She'll tell you her name is Ruth. She's not who she says she is. If she asks you to help her with something, say no. At 7:33 p.m., your dog will start growling at the woods. He's growling at something real. Tonight, you'll hear voices outside. One of them will sound like someone you know. It isn't. I thought about leaving. I could pack up the RV right now, drive back to Dallas, and forget any of this happened. But part of me needed to know if the diary was right, if it kept being right. At 2:06 p.m., a car pulled into Site 8. It was a small sedan, dark blue, with Arkansas plates. A woman got out. She looked to be in her 40s, thin, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She started setting up a tent. I walked over. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove the diary wrong. "Need any help?" I asked. She looked up and smiled. "That would be great, actually. I'm terrible at these things." We set up her tent together. She told me her name was Ruth and that she was driving through Texas on her way to visit family in Houston. She said she'd never been to Caddo Lake before and thought it looked interesting. "Are you here alone?" I asked. "Just me," she said. "You?" "Me and my dog." She asked his name. When I told her, she didn't react. No flicker of recognition, no indication she'd ever heard of Cooper before. "Well, thanks for the help," she said. "If you need anything, I'm right next door." I went back to my site. I opened the diary again and stared at the words. She's not who she says she is. What did that mean? Was Ruth not her real name? Was she lying about where she was going? At 7:33 p.m., Cooper stood up from where he'd been lying by the fire and growled. His hackles went up, and he stared at the tree line behind the RV. I followed his gaze but didn't see anything. "What is it, boy?" I asked. He kept growling, low and steady. Then he barked once, sharp and aggressive. I'd never heard him bark like that before. I grabbed a flashlight and shined it into the woods. Nothing, just trees and darkness. Cooper barked again, then whined and pressed against my leg. Whatever he'd seen or smelled, it scared him. I brought him inside the RV and locked the door. The voices started at 9:47 p.m. At first I thought it was Carl and Ruth talking outside, maybe at her campsite. But then I realized the voices were coming from the woods behind my RV. Two voices, a man and a woman, having a conversation I couldn't quite make out. I opened the window a crack to listen. "Should tell him," the man's voice said. "No, not yet," the woman's voice. "He needs to know before," the man's voice cut off. There was a long pause, and then the woman spoke again. Michael, can you hear me?" I froze. The voice sounded like Sarah, my ex-wife. Same tone, same inflection. "Michael, I need you to come outside. I need to talk to you." Cooper was growling again, his body rigid. I closed the window and stepped back. The diary had said one of the voices would sound like someone I knew. It had said it wasn't real. "Michael, please. I'm sorry about everything. I just want to talk." Sarah's voice. Exactly like Sarah's voice. I turned off the lights inside the RV and sat on the bed in the dark. Cooper climbed up next to me, shaking. The voice kept calling my name for another hour before it finally stopped. I read the entry for November 13th, Sunday. "Ruth will ask you to help her move something heavy at 10:00 a.m. If you go into her tent, you won't come out the same. At 3:22 p.m., you'll see someone standing at the edge of the lake. Don't go near them. Tonight, Carl will start screaming. Don't go to his site. He's already gone." I didn't sleep. When the sun came up, I made coffee and sat outside watching Ruth's campsite. She came out of her tent around 9:30 a.m., stretched and waved at me. At 10:02 a.m., she walked over. "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you, but I could really use some help. I've got this cooler in my tent, and it's way too heavy for me to move by myself. Would you mind?" I looked at her. She seemed normal, friendly. There was nothing obviously wrong about her. "I can't," I said, "sorry." Her smile faded. "It'll just take a second." I said no. She stared at me for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, no problem." She walked back to her site. I watched her go inside her tent. A minute later, she came back out, easily carrying a large cooler by herself. She loaded it into her car without any trouble. The cooler hadn't been heavy at all. At 3:20 p.m., I walked down to the lake with Cooper. There was a small fishing dock about a quarter mile from the RV park, and I wanted to get out of the campsite for a while. The lake was still in dark, covered in patches of green algae. Cypress trees rose out of the water, their roots twisted and exposed. At 3:22 p.m., I saw someone standing at the edge of the dock. It was a man facing away from me. He wore jeans and a gray jacket. He was completely motionless, hands at his sides, staring out at the water. I stopped walking. Cooper whined and pulled on the leash, trying to go back the way we'd come. The man didn't move, didn't turn around. He just stood there. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked quickly back to the RV. That night at 11:47 p.m., Carl started screaming. It was a terrible sound, raw and full of pain. It went on for maybe 30 seconds, then cut off abruptly. I looked out the window toward Site 3. His truck was still there, but I couldn't see any lights. The diary had said not to go to his site. It had said he was already gone. I stayed inside. In the morning, Carl's truck was gone. Site 3 was empty. I walked over to check. There was no sign anyone had been there. No trash, no tire marks, nothing. The site was clean, like it had been vacant for days. I went to Linda's office and asked if Carl had checked out. "Carl?" she said. "Site 3? Yeah, he was there yesterday." She looked at her computer, frowning. "Site 3's been empty all week. Are you sure you mean Carl?" "He introduced himself to me. He offered me a beer on Friday." Linda shook her head. "I don't have anyone named Carl in the system. Site 3's been vacant since last Monday." I went back to my RV and opened the diary. The entry for November 14th was short. "You're starting to understand. They're not real. None of them are real. Except you and me. Tonight, Ruth will invite you to her campsite. If you go, she'll show you something. You need to see it." I closed the diary and looked at Ruth's campsite. Her tent was still there, but I hadn't seen her all day. Her car was gone. At 7:15 p.m., Ruth came back. She parked her car and got out, carrying 2 bags of groceries. She waved at me. "Hey, Michael, want to come over for dinner? I'm making chili." I should have said no, but I needed answers. I needed to know what was happening. "Sure," I said. I followed her to her campsite. She'd set up a small propane stove outside her tent and was heating a pot. It smelled normal, like food. "So where are you really from?" I asked. She smiled. "I told you, Arkansas, and you're really on your way to Houston?" "That's right." "Why did you lie about the cooler being heavy?" Her smile didn't change. "I didn't lie. It was heavy when I needed your help. It got lighter when you said no. That doesn't make sense." "Not to you." She stirred the chili. "You want to know about the diary, don't you?" I stared at her. "How do you know about the diary?" "Because I wrote it." "That's impossible. The diary predicted things before they happened." "Did it?" she asked. "Or did things happen because you read the diary?" "You're saying I made this happen?" "I'm saying you believe it happened. And belief is a powerful thing, Michael, especially here." "What's special about here?" Ruth pointed toward the woods. Caddo Lake is old, older than people realize. The water remembers things. The trees remember things. And sometimes when someone comes here with the right kind of mind, someone open, someone recently broken, the lake shows them what they need to see. I don't understand. You found the diary because you needed to find it. You met Carl because you needed to meet him. You saw the man on the dock because you needed to see him. None of it was real, Michael, and all of it was real. What about you? She laughed. What do you think? I stepped back. Cooper was at my RV, barking frantically. Go read the last entry, Ruth said. Then decide what you want to do. I ran back to my RV, grabbed the diary, and flipped to the final page. November 17th, 11:59 p.m. You're next. You can leave, but it won't matter. The lake knows you now. It knows what you're afraid of, what you've lost, what you're running from. It will follow you. It will show you things until you can't tell what's real anymore. Or you can stay. You can become part of the lake, part of the trees, part of the stories that play out for the next person who comes here broken and alone. You can become someone like Carl, someone like Ruth, someone like the man on the dock. Choose. Below that, in different handwriting, my handwriting, were 2 more lines. I chose to stay. Now I'm writing this for you. I dropped the diary. My hands were shaking. I looked at the date on my phone. November 17th, 11th, 58 p.m. I ran to my truck, started the engine, and drove. I didn't unhook the RV. I didn't pack anything. I just drove. I made it to Marshall before I had to pull over. My phone had 6 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. When I checked, they were all from the RV park office. There was one voicemail. It was Linda's voice. "Hi, Mr. Green, this is Linda from Cypress Haven. I'm calling to confirm your reservation starting November 18th. You're booked for Site 7. Looking forward to seeing you." I checked my phone calendar. Today was November 10th. I haven't made it to the RV park yet. I'm sitting in a motel in Marshall, writing this down before I forget. Before I convince myself it was a dream or a breakdown or something explainable. Tomorrow I'll drive to Cypress Haven. I'll check in with Linda. I'll set up at Site 7. And on Friday morning, November 11th, Cooper and I will walk down the trail behind my site. We'll find a clearing with an aluminum lawn chair. And there, on the ground next to a fallen log, I'll place this diary. Because someone else will need to find it. Someone else driving south, alone and broken. Someone else running from a divorce or a death or some private grief they can't name. The lake will know them. The trees will remember them. And I'll be there watching from Site 8 or Site 3 or maybe standing at the edge of the dock waiting to show them what they need to see. I chose to stay. Now I'm choosing for you.